For Sunday, March 11th, you found the Georgia gang. Topping our agenda today, in DeKalb County, a dropped water pipe. Atlanta soon will get bus rapid transit, and qualifying is almost over. Let the political season begin. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia gang starts now.
And good morning. We're glad you could be with us. I would toast you.
Is that DeKalb water?
I was going to remind everyone, we are in DeKalb County. We're in the absolute best place in Georgia, DeKalb County. We're on Briarcliff Road. And the first thing each of us asked today when we walked in, has this water been boiled?
But it's bottled water.
We're assured it's bottled water.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with this?
You're okay.
I think you'll be fine, Dave.
But let's talk about it. I think where we are really is the banana republic of DeKalb.
Oh, no.
Now, this is ridiculous. That you could have the water director resign and less than 24 hours later have a major 48-inch water main break. It's not really a laughing matter if you're trying to run schools. We can joke about it. I'm happy to, but it is just feels like a banana republic where nothing works. And this is under a good, well-regarded new CEO in Michael Thurmond.
Yes.
So I just, is there an explanation or is it a coincidence? Darren, you can defend him.
Well, I think it was an apology that was made on behalf of the CEO for the inconvenience that this put on the residents of DeKalb County. The one thing I just want to remind, while it was an unfortunate event that happened, but you've got to compliment acting interim director Reggie Wells for completely getting this done 24 hours ahead of schedule. And Dick, you remember this, you live in DeKalb. About 4 years ago, there was a 48-inch water main break, and residents in the county went without water or access to any type of water from the water system for over 3 days. And so I think, yeah, while this was an unfortunate event, the CEO and his team and others acted very swiftly to get the water restored.
Well, you have to. And when I say banana republic, I also make a reference toward the third world. If you don't have functioning infrastructure in the state's third largest county, you got a problem. We have schools closed. Everything shuts down without water.
It is a disgrace. I'll just add that it is unfortunate, obviously, but I mean, you need to be checking on these infrastructure things like all the other various cities are doing. We know Atlanta had checked on things and actually, understood and targeted where the work should be on these old aging pipes.
Shirley Franklin took it on with the $3 billion.
The sewer mayor.
Right. The least glamorous thing she could take on, but she did it in the city of Atlanta. And I think we were all asleep.
Well, DeKalb is actually under a consent decree now. And it's under a consent decree now. And I did get a chance to speak with the CEO about this. And he said that he met with the EPD officials last week, and they told him this was the first time in a long time that they've had good communications with the county. And the person who quit has been there for 2 years before Mr. CEO came along, Thurmond.
Well, that's the next step. Let's talk about that. Scott Tolder was director of the Watershed Management System. That department was politicized by Vernon Jones and never taken seriously through 8 years of Vernon Jones and into Burl Ellis. And Scott Tolder was at the least a professional engineer. Now, he quit the day before the water main broke with quite a letter. You don't see this very often, where you accuse your superiors, in this case, Michael Thurmond, I hate to hear it, with ordering him to break the law, as in the consent decree that you mentioned, Alexis. It's shocking.
The report that I read also went on to say that he had no evidence to back that up.
Well, that's interesting. I saw that too, but I think this goes to the grand jury. I think that's what grand juries are for. You investigate things like this. And I'd like to see the DA doing some investigation and maybe even, I don't know if the U.S. attorney should get involved, but at least the DeKalb grand jury and the DA.
Yeah, but let's not rush to judgment, because
that's why you have a grand jury.
By the way, before you say that, Darren, to Phil's point, it would be B.J. Pack, the U.S. attorney, because what Tolder is accusing the county of is violating the federal consent decree.
True, you're right, but I think it ought to start with the local DA.
I don't trust that. But anyway, go ahead.
But the thing I wanted to just make sure that we understand is that we can't rush to judgment, because this was a disgruntled employee who resigned, and you're right, the day after, because of his obviously lack of leadership of monitoring this particular water main break, we had this unfortunate event. But now I will share with you, Dick, let's not rush to judgment, because my sources tell me, and I'm going to use a term that Phil uses a lot, is that there may be an internal investigation going on within the county of how actually did this water main break happen.
I hope there is.
And more importantly, from this disgruntled employee and Scott Toller to bait these baseless claims, as Alexis just pointed out, there may be an internal investigation that may be released on him as well and some of his inappropriate activities as the director. So
this is not your typical water main break. This has much bigger.
Right, and it would seem that it would have been one of the spots that should have been monitored and was not. And certainly, as the watershed management director, this person, Toller, you know, that was his responsibility, right?
Well, another thing to remember, I'm going to get off this and move on, but another thing to remember is, remember last year, there was a lot of controversy that DeKalb couldn't accommodate any more development because the consent decree was barring the county from adding sewer hookups. The most notable was the case of the Mercy Care clinic run by the nuns in Chambly, and they couldn't hook up to their new building, to the water system. Right. So there's been this tug and pull between Toller, the consent decree, and county officials, and I think that's all stuff that's going to have to come out in the wash.
Can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
When Mr. CEO Thurman started, there were 37,000 water disputes.
Yep.
They're now 100.
Yes, he's done a good job. That's why.
But where was Toller? Well, what did he handle?
Well, no. There's a difference there because Thurman was adjudicating water bill complaints and errors. I think Toller's an engineer who looks at the pipes. I don't think the billing was his area. I'm not sure about that.
The usage.
And one last thing about DeKalb. Just a week ago, the commission raised their pay 60%. And I got the email newsletter from Marita Johnson, Congressman Johnson's wife, who represents a district in DeKalb County. And it's a nice long email, pretty well done, about how they passed the budget. And gosh, Marita Johnson never mentioned the pay raise.
No.
Well, that's because I think it's still, being reviewed. I mean, as I shared with you guys on the show last week, is that there's an investigation going on internally to make sure that it complies with the county charter and the state law. So as we are doing this broadcast, we don't really know where it's ended up. But I think more importantly, she didn't, I think, intentionally leave it out because, I mean, she's been a staunch supporter of
let's hope that CEO Michael Thurman vetoes it. I'm with you on that.
And we think he has that veto power. I forgot to check that this week for sure.
Well, it's still ongoing. I think we we have to wait till next week to see what actually happens.
All right, so let's turn to the city of Atlanta. Actually, I'm a transit buff. I think you all know that. And I don't like federal grants. But in this case, I'll swallow. And I think it's very interesting that $12.6 million from the Federal Transportation Department to the City of Atlanta to build bus rapid transit from Summerhill, Turner Field, up to
Georgia State Stadium.
Georgia State Stadium, now up to the Arts Center Midtown Station. And what tickles me is, Suburban's been talking about bus rapid transit now for at least a decade that I can recall. And here comes Atlanta fixing to have the first BRT system in the state. I think that's kind of cool. I hope it works.
It's very exciting.
Right. Yeah, I thought it was ironic. Keisha Lance Bottoms, the new mayor, was always attacking Republicans during the campaign. Well, it was Johnny Isakson and David Perdue, our U.S. senators, and Congressman Drew Ferguson that did all the heavy lifting for the city of Atlanta. And I hope there's a thank you there somewhere from the mayor.
Issued a statement.
I know she did. She had to.
She wasn't attacking.
I wanted to make the point, though, that stop the Republican bashing. There's going to be money that is out there. The Democrats and Republicans. Well, Democrats have to get money from Washington, D.C. too.
Phil, she wasn't bashing Republicans.
Of course she was. You got a short memory.
She was bashing the Republican Mary Norwood.
We got to get out.
That's a difference.
That's even more absurd.
And beyond that, I think you can point to the former mayor's partnership with Governor Deal on the Savannah port.
Let's talk about the former mayor's mess that he's in with regard to bribery and corruption scandal.
9.4 miles of BRT and $12.6 billion. Good thing?
Yeah.
Streetcar, bad thing.
No, it's
Who's
not
thinking these things through?
It's
Come
not
on.
going to be a streetcar.
One will work, the other doesn't. The other one's free. Come on, it's a joke. All right, when we come back, we will address the issues facing the state of Georgia, including a lot of jobs for one of our collar counties. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
A big week for Governor Nathan Deal. Earlier in the week, he signed that adoption bill that we've talked about before, a complete overhaul of the state's adoption laws. He also was able to do something he enjoys most, I think, go out to Newton County, straight out I-20, and announce that Facebook, the tech giant, is setting up a huge data farm there, solar powered, by the way. 150 jobs, X million dollars.
Yeah.
He's really on a roll with that.
That was a real coup out there, and that's going to really boost development. And that actually, it's a 4-county area. You're right, it's Newton County, but that could be a new growth area. I would keep an eye on that. You know, there's a couple things in the budget too that I know a lot of times are underreported. But I noticed one item in the amended budget that the governor had, and that was the extension of runways all throughout Georgia, mainly rural Georgia, and these municipal airports. That is huge for boosting economic development, and it's past time we did that. So that was a good thing.
I was also glad to see the General Assembly add funds to the budget. They're working on the big budget now, as we used to call it, and they added funds for school safety.
Right.
I just think that's a critical need.
Yeah, it seems as if the state could take some notes from the Atlanta area school districts, particularly the city of Atlanta, because they have had school safety as an issue for a long time as a result of unfortunate gang activity going back as far as when I was in school in the 60s. So I think, and we always had police officers on site at the school, so people, you know, felt safe.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because that does enhance safety to have an armed policeman nearby. And also, as a footnote to all of this, there's not been a single problem on our campuses for over a year with the concealed carry gun law. We've had responsible students with concealed carry, and people thought, liberals thought that, oh, there'd be shootings and all this kind of stuff. Not a single incident.
But the General Assembly's not doing anything about guns. It looks to me they're as frozen as Congress is.
Right.
They're not even looking at token measures.
No.
Well, they don't want to tamper with gun rights.
It's an election year. That's what it is, because they're afraid to
We've not
go
really
against
talked
NRA.
about this distracted driving bill, but it's in trouble in the Senate.
It is.
And
John
the
Carson.
statistics all favor some hands-free.
Well, you remember I gave a shout out to Representative John Carson of Marietta, who was promoting this. The problem is
Casey Cagle's saying no.
Well, the problem is some of the exceptions, and that's where the roadblocks are. And you know, it's going to be very tricky for a law officer to often just say, well, wait a minute, were you calling an emergency or not? That's a tough one.
Yeah, the old question was my seatbelt fastened before I saw the blue
That's
lights?
Right. Good analogy.
Well, they definitely need
I had to use it once. One note, I didn't get on last week, but I'll make it clear that it's interesting, in this new age of the Republican Party, Johnny Isakson has completely broken with Donald Trump on tariffs. He just says, nope, I'm opposed to it, period.
Well,
you don't hear that very often.
Not completely, and I think that's spin from the liberal Atlanta Journal-Constitution, because you remember...
No, it's from his press release.
Well, let me finish my... Can I finish my point?
Yeah.
The paper is certainly not conservative there, and you might want to write that down. But anyhow, on Friday, there were exceptions to the tariffs. I think that the administration was listening to various people, and Perdue said he liked it. Johnny Isakson said he liked the carve-outs for, say, Canada
and Mexico,
and perhaps Australia. So this is like any other negotiation, the art of the deal. It's a moving thing.
Well, you may want to write this down. So let me give you 3 instances. Make sure you get your pen out. So Johnny Isakson, this is not new, right? So first of all, he criticized Donald Trump for his inappropriate, unhinged tweets. That was number 1, Phil. Remember that. Write that down. Number 2.
I don't think he said unhinged.
Yeah, no, he did. He said it was inappropriate, right? Number 2, he criticized President Trump on the S-hole remark that we think he made, but he denied. And then most recently, he criticized the president on his lack of wanting to actually bring a true immigration reform to this country, and he also criticized them on his lack of transparency with gun control. So what you see is it's a tale of two Republicans. I've talked about this. You have one Republican in David Perdue, U.S. Senator, who's just going to run through a brick wall for this president, but you have a more sensible Republican in Johnny Isakson, who's consistently been breaking away from this president, because the Johnny Isakson motto, Republicans are getting elected in this state, is being broken because now President Trump has just really drawn everyone to the right. So I want to commend Senator Isakson, and I want to commend the AJC, which is, I think, a very fair newspaper, for truly reporting. Don't cut me off.
What's the name of Minister Farrakhan's paper?
They have been reporting the evolution of the new Johnny Isakson that knows that this president is inappropriate.
Well, Johnny Isakson, to his credit, voted for some of the toughest Trump-supported immigration bills. You forgot to mention the other side of that, and we sometimes disagree with President Trump, so it just because there's
I've never heard you disagree with the president.
Oh, sure, of
Give
course.
me one instance.
Of course.
And I want to just go back. We got to get out.
Okay.
But I want to be sure that everybody understood what Theron said. Theron used a very cleaned up version of the word S-hole. That was S-hole. There was no A in front of that. It was S-hole. Okay, I just want to make sure you don't get
my mother's watching, so I
plus,
can't use that type of language on television.
Plus, there's no proof he ever said that. It was a spin by Schumer
Dick
and Lindsey
Durbin made
Graham.
it up. Dick Durbin, my college classmate, made that
He
up.
did not make it up.
They heard it. Several people
said it was
said
something
they heard
like that. He started
something
spin
like that.
Yeah.
Oh my.
All right.
Okay.
We got to get out. When we come back, we'll go to hardcore politics. Qualifying's wrapping up, and not a lot of surprises, but some interesting fodder. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
We are back at another election cycle. It's kind of hard to believe. It seems that the election should be further out. And that's because in 2017 we had that Megillah of a special election for Congress in the 6th District where we set a record for fundraising and it dominated the whole political scene. But now we're sort of back on the regular statewide cycle. We have a governor leaving office. We have a lieutenant governor seeking to succeed him. We have two credible Democratic candidates seeking to challenge the incumbent Republicans. Qualifying was this week. It wrapped up shortly after we taped this week. No major surprises. One on the House side we can get to, but I thought about it. The campaign's begun. The Republicans are already running radio ads condemning the two Stacys without naming them. It's really a weird ad and poorly done, very amateurish. But it says, I hear that Stacey's a liberal. Yeah, Stacey's a liberal. She's a lawyer in Atlanta. What does that mean?
I think Phil Kent wrote it because he's been using the term liberal a lot today. But one of the things also, Dick, is to mention, I think as we tape, we're probably going to have upwards to 20 plus Republican legislators not seek re-election.
Right.
And I think pretty close to maybe 12 or 14, depending on who actually will be in leadership positions. And so this is going to be a sort of a retooling election year for Republicans, because you're going to be losing a lot of key Republicans that chair a lot of
committee
committees.
chairs.
Yeah, committee
Very
chairs.
Important.
And so, but Democrats, I think that we are seeing a influx of women who are running for office and challenging so even some incumbent members on the Democratic side. So I think this is going to be a really interesting election season.
Well, starting at the top in the race for governor, it's kind of curious. During the week of qualifying, a well-known business columnist writing on her own blog suggested that Vince Dooley run for governor because he knows a lot of businessmen. That's a stretch. I guess she's not happy with the field. I guess she's saying that she doesn't think Casey Cagle or Brian Kemp or the other candidates on the Republican side are worth worrying about.
Well, I would have to say I'm going to throw a bouquet to pretty much all of the candidates, Democrat and Republican, for governor. Each one can point to some things that they have done to try to boost business and jobs in Georgia. So that column, I just thought it was she had to have something on deadline and knock something out. But I think Theron had a fairly good analysis there, I might say. I think Republicans will lose some seats in the House of Representatives. However, as you know, they have such a huge majority in the House that a loss, I'm going to predict maybe 4 seats lost in some competitive districts. Well, that's not going to affect really GOP control in the House. And I think the Senate will probably pretty much stay the same. I think Jen Jordan might lose. She's in trouble in that Sandy Springs district.
Jen is going to be fine.
Let's go back to the governor's race a little bit, because there have been some developments. You've had Casey Cagle really stir things up with his flap with Delta Airlines. Brian Kemp this week, Phil, I thought you'd be dancing, calling for a complete criminal database of criminal illegal aliens.
Yes, I wept when I saw it.
I know.
That was great.
Well, and so he's tacking right. Michael Williams.
We like to call it common sense.
Well,
a lot of independents and Democrats like that.
And Brian Kemp's tax-free holiday for guns and ammunition on 4th of July.
I may go shopping then. That's great.
Make for
that is a terribly inappropriate response to what happened.
They're trying to win.
Well, they were the primary.
It's a race to the right.
Alexis, you've never liked the Second Amendment. We get that.
Right,
well,
but then on the
it's been misinterpreted.
On the Democratic side, I think a very important thing happened this week without a lot of notice. Stacey Abrams got the endorsement of the Georgia Association of Educators, the teachers union.
Right.
They say they're not a union.
It's the affiliate of the left-wing National Education Association.
But I think that is a heavy
got a bunch of members
finger on the Democratic scale.
Yes.
If you look at a Democratic primary and you look at the huge proportion of African-American voters on the Democratic side, now you take the teachers union, which has always been powerful in this state, that puts Stacey Evans behind the 8 ball a little bit and gives Stacey Abrams quite an advantage.
Well, yes and no. You know, there's 2 teacher associations in the state, and there's the Professional Association of Georgia Educators, which is just as influential as the GAE.
Right wing.
Well, I call it, centrist, right? But they still have clout, to Dick's point.
Absolutely.
And I think Stacey Evans, could get some support, and Republicans get some support from Page.
Now, that brings me to a commercial for Stacey Abrams, and we're running out of time here, unfortunately, but I'm a little bit troubled by this commercial for Stacey Abrams, because it's so black. It's
just too black for you.
Well, it's just
what does that
it's
mean,
a big
Dick?
state. It's a big state.
What's wrong with being too black?
But the thing you just said though, the primary. It's for the primary.
But there she is with Rosa Parks and Michelle Obama.
You can't get any better than that.
It's a Democrat
unless
primary.
You live in Walton County, unless you live in Walton County or Barrow County or Towns County, they're going, what is that?
Well, they're saying she's the point, and it's also done by a PAC. It's not her ad, so that's one thing. But the other point that it makes is that the women's movement is here. It's happening, as Theron and Phil have both pointed out. And that it pays tribute to all of the women speaking up and speaking out.
I thought it was part of Black History Month at first. I didn't realize that it was a campaign commercial. Now, we've got to get out here. Surprises in qualifying. Earl Earhart, state representative, long-serving from Marietta, is stepped down. His wife's qualified to run for his seat. And John Barge, one of the least effective officials in the state of Georgia's history, has qualified again for state school superintendent.
He was the former state school superintendent.
He was school superintendent, probably setting records for ineffectiveness.
Well, he opposed OSD early on, and that got voted down.
You remember he ran against Nathan Deal in the Republican primary and was totally decimated.
All right, we got to get out. There weren't that many surprises. So when we come back, we'll anoint some winners and we'll choose some losers. Stick with us.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
She's so strategic. It was clearly a choice.
And we'll begin, let's see, Phil.
Okay. I want to do, and I think probably all of us might want to make a winner, is Jeff Parker, the new CEO of MARTA.
Thank you.
I know him. He's currently vice president of the infrastructure company, HNTB. A great pick. I've got a loser, former Mayor Kasim Reed, in the news this past week. Remember when he released all of those documents, boxes of a lot of times meaningless paperwork when it came to the federal probe of corruption, and it was a joke, and I'm glad that that's finally been exposed. The emails were shameful. They were trying to slow down the media.
And they said so.
And they said so, and that was awful. And KSU, the loser, they are trying to cut the free speech of various clubs there, and they're trying to rate them good, bad. No, everybody should have free speech and availability.
They're also trying to change the pronouns in use.
Exactly.
They want to change pronouns. They're becoming grammar experts. All right, Darren.
Definitely want to echo what Phil said. Jeff Parker definitely is a winner this week. And I also want to give a big shout out to the MARTA board. I mean, they really took this process very seriously. They had a national search, and they picked a homeboy, a person who's well known in this region. Also,
I wouldn't want to succeed Keith Parker.
Well, but Jeff.
Good luck to Jeff Parker.
But Jeffrey Parker is going to do a wonderful job. I definitely want to commend him. My second winner is going to be interim watershed director Reggie Wells. I think that he got his team together. He responded again 24 hours ahead of schedule, and definitely got the water main break fixed. And then special shout out to my good friend on the conservative side, Brian Robinson, who I debate with on the radio every week or so, and he got appointed to the Georgia World Congress Center board. So the governor swore him in this week. And
so a happy camper I saw.
Yeah.
Alexis.
Okay, I'm going to recognize the retired United Methodist Church Bishop Bevel Jones. He was a pillar of the community and a leader among Christian leaders during the early days of civil rights movement. So he will be missed, and he is saluted. Also, the Hall of Fame basketball coach and athletic director at Morehouse College, Arthur McAfee, passed this week.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that was a loss.
All right. Let me pick up, I've been trying to say this for 2 weeks. John Lewis is my friend. I like him, nice fella. But he's got to stop the racial slurs. In a reminiscence on the early civil rights movement, he recalled being thrown into a paddy wagon. And he says this on the eve of St. Patrick's Day.
Well, how else would
a
you
racial
want to refer
slur?
to it?
Loser. See you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program